Hello, and a very warm welcome to the MotorMouth podcast, filmed live here at the Silverstone Experience Museum. It's a very special occasion. We're surrounded by Formula One, Formula E, GT, all sorts of F1 memorabilia as well. It's quite an exceptional place to be. So thank you to Silverstone Experience for allowing us to do this very special podcast here. Tim Sylvie alongside me as ever, and it is our pleasure to have as our guest today multiple F1 race winner, now Sky Sports F1 pundit, Johnny Herbert.
Welcome to the MotorMouth podcast. My name is Tim Sylvie. Now, before we introduce today's guest, I for once do not need to head through the airwaves to Essex and regale my usual Essex-based facts to link up with my lofty, bearded cohort, because he's currently sat socially distanced from me at the incredible Silverstone Experience Museum. Harry Benjamin, how the devil are you?
I'm really well. It's really weird to see you in person because since everything's happened, we've done all of our podcasts through the wonderful medium of Zoom.
Yeah.
So it is a bit weird to see you in person. I feel like I've kind of forgotten how to do this, but I think we're there.
I think we're okay.
And I'm feeling good.
And you are taller than I remember. You seem to have grown, expanded upon your 6'5" frame, and now look about 7'6". But
thank you. Well, it's just nice to get out of the house, really.
It is nice to get out of the house, and what a place to come to.
Exactly. Thank you so much to the Silverstone Experience Museum. What a place it is here. And although, unfortunately, in the UK, we are on the eve of a lockdown, starting, we're doing this on a Wednesday. It starts tonight, which, of course, means this place is sadly going to close. But you can still buy tickets in advance and also buy gift tickets that can be redeemed. So make sure you head to the Silverstone Experience Museum website to check all that stuff out as well.
Absolutely. Now, enough of our ramblings. Shall I introduce today's special guest?
Oh, I think so.
Now, today is indeed a special day because, as we said, we're doing a podcast for the first time what feels like an age, but we're doing it face-to-face with another actual human being in the actual flesh rather than a Zoom call. Not only that, we're doing it on video. So make sure to check this out on our socials. It'll be available on our YouTube channel. So go and take a look when it's out. And as we've said, we're at the incredible Silverstone Experience Museum in front of some very special racing cars to chat with a man widely recognized as one of the best and most cheery racing drivers in the history of British motorsport, a former Formula One racer who started his career in 1974 before progressing through the ranks before a certain Eddie Jordan signed him up for the 1987 season when he won the British F3 Championship before Formula One came calling. There, he raced against the greats, Schumacher, Hill, Mansell. He's an F1 race winner, Le Mans winner, and is now to be found on our screens with the brilliant crew at Sky Sports F1. It is our absolute pleasure, within the walls of this fantastic museum, to welcome Johnny Herbert to the MotorMouth podcast.
Oh, the crowd.
How's that for an intro?
Hey, pretty impressive, I
should point out they're not really here.
No, they're not.
We are social distancing, I promise.
There is no crowd here.
Really good. Really glad I'm here, guys. Really
Pleasure
good.
to have you, Johnny.
Lovely place, this, isn't it?
Stunning.
It is
Yeah.
lovely.
Brilliant.
What a backdrop as well. We've got Mark Webber's 2010 Red Bull behind us
Yeah.
as well. A DC's, I think it's 2000 McLaren, and also Nigel Mansell's car as well,
yes.
the legendary camel liveried one as well, Williams. Johnny, great to have you here. Obviously, weird 2020 so far, really,
Yeah.
and how have you navigated it all, really? Because it's great to see that obviously F1 back up and running earlier this year.
Yeah. Well, for us, actually, nothing changes because the whole weekend is as normal as it can be. Bar the last race in Imola, obviously that was a two-day event. But overall, the travelling is a little bit less because obviously we're not sort of travelling to further afield like we normally do. China, for example. Of course, the latter part of the season will be in Bahrain and Abu Dhabi. But it's been great. It's been brilliant that I think Chase Carey, Liberty, and F1 in general have been able to get this show on the road. So it's been I think a very good season so far. Bit predictable maybe who's going to win the championship, but hey, he's done another sterling job, Lewis Hamilton. So, but overall, yeah, it's been great to be back on the road.
And I think it's brilliant that for fans at home as well, to have F1 back up and running was needed, I think, as well. What we like to do, Johnny, on these podcasts is we obviously talk about you and our guests' careers, and your career is incredibly well documented. But what I want to know is, how did it all start for you? And what were the roots for you? You're from my part of the woods in Essex, Brentwood.
Indeed, yes.
So there's not that much racing around there historically. So where was the impetus to go? I want to be a racing driver.
Cornwall.
Oh.
Yes, Cornwall. Holidays in 2-week holidays in Cornwall we used to have as a family. And weirdly enough, so I must have been about seven I think years old when I went down there one year, and my uncle run the local go-kart track on an old disused runway. And I was taken there probably about 3 times in those 2 weeks we were down there. And I basically just got in it when it opened, and I got out of it when the day had come to an end. So those early days of where suddenly this sport I didn't really know anything about came into my life. I think the only thing I'd ever seen in motorsport, and I think it's classed as motorsport, I'm not sure, was Brands Hatch on the Indy circuit. But it's actually, they had a little sort of circular circuit around sort of clearways, basically around that area, and it was caravan banger racing.
Sounds amazing. Bring that back.
Go and see it. It was, I have to say, very entertaining. Very entertaining. So it was Brands. That's where sort of that type of motorsport came into my life. But I didn't know anything about the single seaters and touring cars and sports cars and everything else that was going on. But it was karting in Cornwall where it all basically kicked off. Then I seemed to be good at it. Then my father bought a kart, which was a family thing. We used to go down to Tilbury at the kart track that used to be there. And then I'd sort of thrash around with it. It was an old JLO powered engine. It was a twin engine one, but we didn't have enough pieces for the second engine on the left-hand side. The fuel tank was up here behind us. The wheels were welded onto the rear axle and the same on the front. And then now and again I'd sort of get out and my dad would get in and then take my sister around for a couple of rides at the same time. And then it sort of grew when my father was spoken to by one of the racing drivers at the time, the karting racing drivers, who said, "He's good, your boy." I said, "You should get him into racing." He said, "Well, I can't get him into racing. He's only 10. Don't worry about that. There's always ways around that," which was forging the license when I did my novice racing, and that was basically how it all kicked off.
And what was the scene like back then? Now we know that the junior scene is incredibly competitive, right from karting, where you could easily drop 100 grand a year on your kid doing some karting, and then obviously you go into the junior categories of F3 and so on, and it gets expensive, and there's loads of different series. What was it like when you were growing up? There was obviously karting, as you say, but what sort of series could you get involved with at that stage?
Well, again, karting was much more simple because there was junior national. That was it. There wasn't any other classes. It was just, when you were 12 years old, you could jump in and go racing. And as I said, I was 10 and a half when I started. I got banned when I was, I think, about 11 and a half, because you're supposed to have been 12.
Oh, naughty.
Naughty, yes. Yeah. So I got banned, then I went back into junior national, and it was when 100 Britain, junior Britain came into play with someone like Alec McNish.
Yep.
That's where he started. But I didn't want to do that. They had very small, narrow tyres. They weren't as fast as the junior nationals, which is what I drove before. So we didn't do anything with the junior Britain and went straight back into junior national. And then you had, after juniors, there was 100 international. So then that was the next sort of big step. And then there was sort of 100 nationals, which was the sort of middle of the road. Everybody could sort of go racing as an adult in that. And then you did have the gearbox karts as well. And then cars, Formula Ford was really the first step into racing cars. Formula First came very similar time as well. I think when I got into it, maybe it was in the second season, I started cars. But it was a bit more simplistic. And as time has gone on, there were so many classes in karting, too many for me. And then there was a point where there was the same thing in early single seaters. There was just too much choice. But I'm glad to see it's gone a little bit back to how it was, and there is a proper route.
There's a ladder now.
Through,
They've
a proper
streamlined
ladder.
it a little bit
the
more.
ladders sort of splintered off, didn't it, in all directions. So it's better. But Formula Ford for single seater racing was the obvious thing to do. Everybody had done it for so many years, and of course a lot of people, as you know, made it to Formula One.
Yeah.
Formula Ford was that sort of kick-off point.
Yeah. And then fast forward a little bit, you stumbled across a certain Eddie Jordan, who all our viewers and listeners will be very familiar with.
Yeah.
How did that relationship come about, and what was it that Eddie did for you?
Well, he was very lucky to meet me. I carried him forward because he'd never won any championship at that point.
So his success is down to you, essentially.
That I tell him every time I see him, yes. If I hadn't won that British F3 championship and got into winning that first Formula 3000 race in Jerez and then carrying that team forward as we did until I had my accident, you would have never been in Formula
he'd
One.
been
You owe
nothing.
me.
Yeah.
Yes, you owe me. But no, Eddie, it was interesting. I did a couple of races in Formula 3 in 1986. And the first race I did in Donington, I finished 4th. And then I think I finished 3rd at the Cellnet Super Prix they had at Brands Hatch. So suddenly I went from a Formula Ford 2000 car, the Quest, which was a bit uncompetitive, unfortunately, at that time. I was always basically at the back of the grid, just suddenly getting into F3, and bang, I made a sort of a massive impact. And then at the end of that year, we had the Grosvenor Awards, which is like the Autosport Awards you have nowadays. And we were basically sort of on 2 separate tables, but we're sort of with our backs to each other. And he sort of leant back and said, Johnny, I can't do an Irish one. But Johnny, have you signed for Glenn Waters? Because I'd done a couple of races with Glenn Waters, which was where Damon and Martin Donnelly raced with in the following season, 87. And I said, no one's spoken to me at all. I'm surprised, but no one has. And he said, oh, well, how about, do you want to come racing with me? And literally, within a space of probably 20 minutes of that conversation started, on the back of the napkin, we signed a deal to get together for the 87 Formula 3 Championship. And it just worked on both sides. Eddie was so good at supplying me what I needed when I got onto the racetrack itself. And of course, then I supplied him that sort of talent that actually then was able to utilise it and get that championship won. So it was just timing, I suppose.
All the best deals seem to be done on the back of a napkin in motorsport, I've noticed. Recurring trend.
But the napkins are much smarter nowadays. Much smarter.
The Paddock Club napkins.
Yes, they are.
Slightly different.
And I tell you what's different. Eddie had a fair amount of money, sponsorship, that he had, so he could actually go out there and go shopping to find the driver that he needed to try and get that sort of elusive championship. Where it's the other way around now.
Yeah.
They could come up to a young driver. I could go up to a young driver and sort of say, you are the best thing I have ever... Wow, you are better than Ayrton Senna. Lewis Hamilton, you're way ahead. How much money you got?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's completely the other way around,
It's
which
funny.
I hate.
It is a shame, and I've noticed it as well, but it's not like it's slowing down. I had a period of time where I was in driver management, but drop the F1 card here, and I used to look after Max Chilton, and Max, great guy, and he won't mind me saying, but I think he paid in the region of 10 to 12 million quid.
He will hate you now,
to race for what was then as Marussia.
Yeah,
at the back. But then you look at you step up to like Marcus Ericsson, who was like 25 million, I heard, and then and it just keeps going, and God knows what some of the drivers now are paying.
But it hasn't changed, because my first season in F1 after my accident was 89. There were 39 cars. They were pre-qualifying before I think we got 30 on the grid as we went into qualifying, and 26 actually qualified for the race. So again, there was a lot of drivers even back then paying for seats. Okay, not the same money as you're talking of now, but the budget I remember of Lotus in about 92 was probably 12 million.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So it's it's a completely different world.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about 88, the year before that, and obviously your huge crash at Brands in Formula 3000. Before that, you're obviously proving that you had the talent, you had the raw speed, you were going places, you had support, and then you had this huge accident, which I'm sure our listeners will all know about.
Yeah.
How did you? First of all, what do you remember from that, if much, and how do you get yourself mentally prepared to come back from a thing like that?
Yeah. Well, luckily I remember everything that happened in that sort of very quick, 5 seconds that it probably lasted from the start to finish. But prior to that, I'd obviously had a test in 1987 when I was doing Formula 3 for Benetton at Brands Hatch, and it went very, very well. Thierry Boutsen sort of set a time, and then I went faster than Thierry. So then that was when the relationship with Peter Collins, Benetton, came into play. And then the week before the crash, I was testing for Lotus in Monza. Nelson Piquet was the other driver, and I went faster than Nelson. So Peter Wall was very interested. Then as I was leaving the circuit, the PA to Enzo Ferrari came up to me and said, Enzo wants to meet you. So this is as I'm leaving to go to Brands Hatch. And then when I get to Brands Hatch, do the qualifying, get on pole position. The first part of the race, I lead by about 12 seconds, I think it was. Of course, it gets stopped by Gregor Wojtek crashing into Roberto Moreno. But just before the race, Frank Williams, I met in the pit lane, and he wanted to meet me after the race. So I have Lotus, I have Benetton, I have Ferrari, and then I've got Frank Williams.
What more could you want?
What more could I want? then I got greedy. And I get greedy. And then, of course, you got the second part of the race. And it's one of these things I look back, I'm always asked, what was one thing you'd sort of change in sort of your career? And the only thing I would change is I parked on pole position with the rear end sort of up, because it's quite a dip going into pole position. So I thought, well, I don't know why I changed it. The first start was absolutely fine. So anyway, so I parked it a little bit sort of up the hill, thinking that when I got going, if I did get a bit of wheel spin, by the time it sort of slid down, it would be straight and you'd pull away. But of course, as I got a bit too much wheel spin, it slid, but it went all the way down into that dip. And then I wasn't able to get the drive where Martin Donnelly and Pierre Luigi Martini got in front of me. And then I was banging wheels with Gregor Wojtek, who had had an incident with in Vallelunga, where I banged my head, actually knocked me off the circuit. I was just passing him for second place, I think it was. He drove into me, and as I was steering away from him, we made the contact. So the car spun. But in Vallelunga, the hairpin, the actual barrier is about 20 or so meters from the apex of the corner itself. But it's like a hairpin. I mean, really, really tight. So I hit it sideways. My head hit the Armco. And as I'm talking to you now, I can't actually remember walking back.
God.
So now and again, it sort of comes to me. And I do know I went into the medical centre and I had to go into the toilet to do a little sample. I can't remember that either. And then I can't remember actually anything else. So anyway, so yes, so we had this sort of wheel banging with Gregor, and of course we get onto the Grand Prix circuit. I thought I got nice drive out of Surtees. And of course it's always very, very narrow, looking in my mirrors, checking what's going on. I could see, look as if Gregor got a nice run out of Surtees. So I thought, well, if I just go in the middle, you can't go right and you can't go left. But he tried to go left, and he went on the grass just very, very slightly. But as he's sort of on the grass, he taps my left rear. And then before I do, it's one of these things, you just sort of, it's so slow when it all happens. But I didn't have time to even go, oh, yeah, this is going to be big. It was like, oh, and bang, you're just straight into the wall. And unfortunately, where the Armco goes down towards Hawthorns, you've got the bridge that goes across. And the Armco goes around sort of the bridge itself, and then it carries on down again. So where it's come out, and there was girders holding the barriers, I hit the girder, which I think I bent it 90 degrees on what I understand. So the impact was massive, about 160 impact, something like that. But then it spins around across the other side, which I still remember. So I remember the first impact, there's a lot of sort of movement.
I remember you saying as well before about the silence as well is something you remember.
That's probably after the first impact, yes.
Okay,
Because as you're spinning across the track, that is, yes, eerie silent. And your eyes are closed, you don't know where it's going, you can feel the sort of the rotation of the car. Then there's another impact head on the other side, and then it's spun again, and it's always, as you said, very, very quiet. Then it stops, and then you sort of, your eyes are closed, you open your eyes up, and then all I could see was the forest on the inside of the track. Yeah. So and this was looking through the monocoque, so the whole monocoque has gone just sort of roughly where my knees are. So the first thing I see is the top of my knees. So the first thought I had, well, from my knees down,
gone.
They're gone.
Oh.
Both. I think they're gone. And the only recollection I have, I can remember Adrian Reynard coming up, my engineer as well. I can't remember that actually at this point, but I do remember a marshal coming to me, sort of going, "You're okay, you're okay." And I said, "Okay, yeah." And then I remember him walking around the front of the car, and then I can just remember him sort of going, "Oh." So I thought, it's maybe not good on this occasion. Then he comes back again. Then I'm just going, knock me out. I just don't want to know what's going on. And then that's sort of the last thing I remember. But I remember the whole sequence sort of events. Sometimes they get a bit muddled up in certain orders, but
Pretty
generally,
clearly,
pretty clearly, I sort of remember what was going on.
We've had a couple of drivers with some nasty incidents on this. We had Martin Plowman, British GTs. He had a horrific accident early on in his career, and where he got impaled on a part of the fence came off and it went through him.
Right.
And he went to hospital with the fence inside him. And it just horrific, make your skin crawl kind of accident. But yours was, you essentially shattered your ankles as far as I understand.
Pretty much. Well, the left one was actually sort of hanging off.
Oh.
The left one was actually off. The other one looks like a monkey's foot. It's very flat, it's quite wide. The heel is sort of hanging around it's been mushed around the side. But, and I haven't tried it yet, and I should do before I get too old, I reckon it'd be brilliant water skiing.
Oh, there you go.
I think it would work
new
perfectly.
career for you.
Yes, maybe.
Oh my
You
goodness.
have to see that happen. But what's incredible though, so vivid and obviously such a catastrophic incident. Coming back from that physically is one thing, with the recovery, almost you'd think near on impossible. But then mentally as well,
Yeah.
that's got to be a whole nother challenge to come back. And you made your F1 debut a year later.
Less
Well,
than
less than a year
That was,
later, in '89.
August, August the crash.
Okay, so less than a year. So
end of February. Yeah.
so that, when you see that written down, that looks ridiculous.
Yeah. It was.
And but it was too
mad.
early, wasn't it? I mean, you
It was.
You did it and then decided to take a break because
Well, I didn't decide to take
Well,
a break. My
an enforced
bastard
break.
friend Flavio, am I allowed to swear? I don't know.
Yeah, go for
my
it, go for your
bastard
life.
friend Flavio Briatore.
you can swear even
He
harder.
got
if
me
you
out,
want.
yeah, bastard. Yeah, he arrested me. But yeah, the comeback. It's one of those. I remember sitting in hospital originally in Sidcup, and I got moved out into sort of a private hospital. And I remember the first time I remember waking up in hospital itself. It was only for about 30 seconds, something like that. I was on quite high on sort of on the drugs at the time. But Michel Trollet had a crash on the Saturday at Dingledale. It was Dingledale. And he basically went over had a massive curb on the apex, but he went over the gravel and landed under the barrier, and it just smashed all his legs. So I vaguely remember waking up and trying to whistle across, because he was actually on the other side of intensive care, trying to whistle to him. And then as I'm doing that, I then realised my feet were up in the air, but they were wrapped up in bandages, but in a shape of feet.
Yeah,
So that was the first time I realised that they were still on.
still attached. What a relief.
But the colour was probably the only thing I thought, maybe that doesn't look quite so good. Then I remember fainting after that. Not because of what I saw, just because I sort of gone back in with all the drugs I was under. And then when I came out, and after a couple of weeks, it was then just seeing what was happening. And then I was on morphine for a good few weeks. And then I remember getting to a point with the morphine that I had this wonderful dream. It's a really amazing dream. It's not a dream when you're asleep during the night, but it's a dream I could have 24 hours a day. So my eyes would be closed because I was really tired, lost a lot of blood, really, really tired. And then I'd go, it's a waterfall, beautiful waterfall, and then it'd be me and my wife, as she was my girlfriend at the time, under this waterfall. Our clothes would sort of peel off, but they peel off and we turn into these monsters. And then with the monsters, we then...
I thought it was going to be a lewd dream for a minute.
No. I wish. I wish. I can't dream like that. I've never had a dream like that. So anyway, we started then eating each other, and then somehow we started multiplying. But the weird thing is, I opened my eyes and it would stop. You know, normally when you have a dream, you try and get back into a dream. You close your eyes, go to sleep, but you never get back to that same point. But I could literally close my eyes and I'd go back to exactly the same point that I'd left it before I'd opened my eyes, or something like that.
That's
and then it
so
just went
weird.
on and on and on. And then it was just basically
Sounds kind of fun.
a fit.
No?
It's a bit odd.
Well, eating your
It's
missus
very,
is
very
a
odd.
little bit strange.
Yes.
Yeah, granted.
I got taken off that quite promptly once they understood that one. And then it was just then really sort of seeing how the feet were, because the left one was obviously the one they were worried about, of course, with infection. And luckily the infection came sort of only a couple of times over the next sort of couple of years. And then it was just seeing the movement. My right one wasn't so bad as far as movement goes. It's only probably 80% from what it was normally. But the left one didn't move at all, because obviously it had been taken off, and it's the, I can't remember what bone it is now. It's the knuckle bone in your ankle, talus. And it had basically been not broken, but just basically snapped in the middle of it. So when they put it back together again, the blood doesn't really circulate very well. So sometimes there is a point that maybe that's where you either lose it, which was the first thing that they were talking about. Wasn't aware of it, and then you screw it back together again. And they got the guy who did Barry Sheen's legs when he broke his legs came along. I think Professor Sig Watkins, the F1 doctor, came with him, and they tried to. He wanted to put screws in, but the doctor who was actually doing the operation said, well, you can't do that, because the way that the bone, I don't know what they call it, the way the bone had gone on both feet, but especially the left one, it's like plasticine, like putty. So it's all very soft. So if you try to put a screw in it, you can't.
Work,
it's not going to work. So literally, it was like they patted it to look like a shape of a foot. and then that was sort of the end of it. And then you let the bone sort of fix itself. But I do remember the first probably 0.5 millimetre of movement that I had, because Peter Collins from Benetton was phoning me up sort of nearly every day, seeing how I was. And I just remember the first, say, 0.5 millimetre. And it was like, it's moving, it's moving, it's moving. So this was a positive thing.
Yeah.
So it's all that stuff that really
Keeping
comes into play.
Each step.
But my dream hadn't ended. I still had an option. The option wasn't ripped up and thrown away.
Well, that's why I wanted to know.
Yeah.
That whole time, are you thinking, right, whatever's going on there, but I've still got to get back to F1. That's what I'm doing. That is the goal. Did that ever wane, or was it
No,
always
because
there?
I had Peter phoning up.
Yeah,
and just having Peter phone up, I still had this positive thing of him sort of never saying, sadly, we're not going to be able to take you. There was never, ever any of that chat. The only time I was aware of what direction I was going to go in, I think they were racing in Jerez, I think it was that year in '88. And I got a phone call saying they're going to take up the option. So that, again, mentally, it was another boost.
Keeps you going.
Keeps you going, knowing right now I've got a drive. But I'm still in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
I've still got a long, long way to go. So it's not a given. But then that's where I went to Tony Mattis in Austria, and I sort of spent sort of a good few months out there trying to get myself back into fitness, which was easy in many respects, because doing sit-ups and press-ups and weights and all that stuff is easy. To actually do the cardio side was much, much harder, because I didn't walk, I think, for the first time until about the 10th of December, something like that. So it was only sort of just 2 months, a little bit less before the first race. But I had the drive. And I had one day a month where I felt, I can't do this anymore. This is just way too much. Not physically, mentally. Mentally, it was just too much. Wake up the next morning, all fresh, bang.
Back at it.
And you'd be able to do the next month, and it might come in month and a half later, and you'd sort of have that one day again. So, but I always had this light that was there, always, because I hadn't made it.
Yeah.
Some people get there. Martin Donnelly, bless his heart, sort of got there, but had his big accident, and then that was it for him.
Yeah,
but
you still had your best days ahead.
Yeah.
I suppose having all that interest as well from Williams, Ferrari.
That had gone.
That
had gone. I never met Enzo. I never met Frank. I saw Peter War, because actually I drove for them after Martin had his crash. And that was the last year of Lotus, sort of Team Lotus.
But I suppose having had that interest, that's another positive beacon, being like, okay, so I was good, I can still get that back. And actually, I thought it was a nice segue actually for pointing at some of the bits you've brought with us on the table. And this here,
yes.
Which you'll be able to see if you're watching this on our app or on YouTube. Now, this is the last or the only.
It's the only bit
remains
left
of your Formula
in the
3000
world.
car.
Yes,
which is not a lot.
And where is this actually from?
Yeah. Well, it's from sort of the side near where the fueling
okay.
sort of thing was. So so that's they cut it off, and I got given that by Adrian Reynard, I think, about 6 or so months later. And
I don't know whether it's a nice thing to have lying around your house or not, reminding you of the most traumatic experience.
All I will say, traumatic. It wasn't traumatic, because if you haven't seen it, I think you can find it on YouTube.
Yeah, I watched it before we started filming.
Wasn't it a good one?
It was a pretty impressive shunt.
Very impressive, yeah. I think there were 26 cars on the ground. I think there were only 6 left
at
the end of the restart.
The commentator says something like, all the cars after the third car have basically crashed.
Yes, pretty much so. Yeah, so that's the only bit that I've still got, like a little doorstop that I've got. So, but it's nice, because that's, that was a big part of my life.
Absolutely.
It changed a lot of, what I sort of did very naturally before into sort of something I had to work at much, much more, which is probably not the perfect way.
I'm going to skip forward past a couple of years in the interest of time, but I do want to touch on...
We're not interested. So,
let's wrap it up quickly.
There's not much in the middle.
You took a victory at the British Grand Prix in a Formula One car. Take us back to that time and the emotions you felt when you crossed the line at your home Grand Prix, and that incredible feeling when you saw the checker flag.
Yeah, well, the first bit, obviously, it starts with Damon and Michael, and Damon driving into Michael. Thank you again, Damon. And then me not realising until I think I got to Hangar Straight, right at the end of Hangar Straight, and then I was sort of thinking, well, I was third. Hello. There's a bit more waving going on while I'm going there. So I hadn't even realised that I'd taken the lead of the race. And then it was trying to just stay consistent. That's all I wanted to do. It wasn't push any harder. It was just stay consistent. I remember DC having a penalty. Ross Brawn coming on the radio and said, "You're not racing DC. Don't worry about him. He's going to have his stop and go." So that made my life a lot easier. Jean Alessi was about 20 odd seconds down on me, and from that point of view. And then there was always one issue that I had getting towards the end of the race, and it always happened for whatever reason, about 10 laps to go, is after my accident, my big toe on my right foot got sort of partly severed off. And then when I put it back on again, there's a lot of callus at the bottom of the toe. And it got super, super sensitive. I mean, super sensitive. And I was literally screaming in the car for those last 10 laps. But I had to then try and adapt my driving to overcome that, because I couldn't have gone on for those 10 laps permanently sort of screaming in the pain that I was in. So I had to do left foot braking, which wasn't very good because the left ankle doesn't really move hardly at all. So I was able to, I could never do it in qualifying, but I could do it in a race where I could do about the same pace for one lap. Then I'd do 2 laps with the right, 1 lap with the left, 2 with the right. And that got me through the rest of those, as I said, 10 or so laps. But then it was just seeing the sea of flags and all the grandstands and on top of the banks. And that just gives you a real sort of extra little bit of concentration in many ways. And then you can sort of apply it in a much easier way. But then when it came down to the last lap itself, it was just out of this world for me, because, you know, after everything that I'd gone through, going through those sort of club corner, I remember, it's always a great view there, the old club corner.
Yep.
And then sort of coming up to the start-finishing line, seeing that checkered flag, and again with the old grandstand on the left-hand side, the team hanging over the wall, and a lot of other teams actually hanging over the wall as well, you know, made it more special. But it wasn't the win that I was really thinking about. It was all that comeback, all that pain I'd gone through, all the sort of sacrifices I had to do at the same time when I went out to Austria, for example. Then even after that, when I went to Japan to try and sort of, you know, get everything back into a normality, or as close as normality as I could. So that was my first thought, was all that it was worthwhile after all that, and then I could actually enjoy the race win itself. And it was special with DC and Jean picking me up, which was really, really nice, and just massively emotional, because Silverstone had been such an important part of my life, but Damon's life and Mark Blundell's life and Martin's life, you know, Nigel's life, you know, all of us as British drivers, and even other people, you know, Senners of the world and Mickers of the world, etc., because they've all raced mainly in the UK. But Silverstone is always, you know, a very, very special one.
You achieved multiple F1 race wins over your career. Was there a time where, I'm interested to know how drivers see Formula One? Do they go in thinking, or especially, you know, maybe less so these days, but, you know, in your era, are you thinking, I'm going to be a world champion?
Yeah.
Or
that's all it was about.
And did you maintain that belief when you got after your accident?
Yes, I had to, because I think that just gave me the motivation that I did. As I said a little bit earlier on, it was harder after that, much, much harder. Everything I did before, I didn't even think what was going on. They're very rare beasts to see, and Lewis is that beast at the moment.
Yeah.
You ask him, where do you brake? What do you look at? He has no clue. Doesn't know what he's doing, because it's this 180-degree information that just puts you on the right line. You brake where you need to, you shift where you need to, you pick out sort of the apexes and exits and everything else, but you don't think about it. But after that, I had to think about it, and then that's the natural ability gone. So it definitely doesn't work as much, and that's why Lewis is as a successful F1 driver as he is. So it's interesting just seeing. I've been on both sides, where I had this pure, easy life in many respects of driving, and it was simple, and then afterwards, it was that sort of hard graft to get yourself sort of in a position on the grid, but then in a position in a race. And it fascinates me, actually, because I had one, in all my races I did in F1, I had one race that it all went back to that type of feelings that I had before my accident, which was Malaysia 99. I don't know why, I don't know how, and it frustrates me. I don't know. I don't know why, but it's damn interesting how this thing works.
Talking of the mind, is it so? you've been an F1 driver, you've won Le Mans, you've had Grand Prix wins. Is it hard for you to comprehend now? I know you're still in the sport because you're obviously, you're trackside there doing, punditry and so on. But do you ever have to sort of pinch yourself and think, God, that was really me. I did those things. Because from an outsider's perspective, I guess, we put people like you on a pedestal almost. It's like the great F1 drivers of the past. Does that resonate with you? Does that sink in, or do you sort of take it for granted that it was just something I did and I'm proud of it and that's it?
Yeah, I think I know I was lucky. I know I was a very fortunate guy that sort of had a talent but was able to apply it when I got a chance, and that's something I think is still applies today. You've still got to have the raw talent to be able to get to F1. And then you probably have that little extra more to stay in it as well. So I look back and I go, I know I was very lucky. Yeah, a bit unfortunate with the accident, but hey, that's life. I mentally had the strength to get through it, and that is something that's very important. Le Mans was massively important for me. Yeah. It was 1991, sort of at the beginning of my comeback, and it was really, I thought, to prove to the rest of the people in the paddock that I could do a 24-hour race without a problem, because there was always a question mark. But actually, when I get to probably my last race in Malaysia, there was always a question mark. Yeah. And I was damaged goods. Would I, Johnny Herbert, damaged like I was after the crash in '88, be in Formula One in this day and age? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I had issues, but I was very lucky I had Peter Collins. Yeah. But that just wouldn't happen today, because they just after the perfect specimen of a racing driver. So now, I was lucky.
Before we move on to a very important segment of the podcast, which we'll ease you into very shortly, I'm just curious. Out of you had 3 F1 wins, right?
Yeah.
Which was your favourite? Was it the British Grand Prix, say, as your home race?
Yeah, it's going to be the first one, just because of everything. As I said before, I'd gone through Silverstone as a massive history in motorsport itself. But British drivers, love the track. It's been through various configurations. Some have been good, some have been bad. We've got a good one at the moment. I've won on a good one at the same time. So I was lucky. I won Monza. The history that Monza's got, and then Nürburgring in a very similar way. So I've been very lucky. But the first one, stands out.
Right. Well, listen, this is the important part, Johnny. I'm going to hand you over to my very lofty colleague, who is going to introduce you to the MotorMouth quiz.
Welcome, Johnny Herbert, to MotorMouths, the hardest quiz in motorsport. I can tell you can't wait to do it.
Yeah, I can't wait.
The look in your eyes. We have had pretty much everybody who's ever taken part on... All right, that's getting annoying now. Come on.
I'm enjoying myself.
Turn that down. It's the first time we've had the music in a long while, but I can actually hear it.
Oh, yeah, you don't usually hear it,
No,
do
I don't usually hear it. Again, Zoom letting us down there. But anyway, everybody...
Just keep it going. I may not hear the question.
Are you struggling to concentrate?
Yes. Turn it off.
Keep going.
Turn it off. Right, anyway. We've got 4 clips for you.
I can bring it back.
No, please do not. We've got 4 clips for you.
Go on.
They're all about your career, or bits you've done, and it's basically a bit like in what's the question of sport? Say what you see, but say what you hear. And there's 3 points up for grabs for each one. Then there's a bonus question. There's a big long leaderboard. At the moment, you can get a maximum of 14 points if I'm feeling generous.
That's not happening.
And it is the likes of Dilbag Gill and actually Alexander Sims. So Formula E is really striking.
2
hot
guys
on
from the
that
same
one.
team as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow,
So they really do well. But if we're looking around the midfield mark, which is around P20, we're talking. Okay. That's the likes of 10, 10 and a half. And we're talking Crofty, DC level. Natalie Pink and Rachel Brooks are the best so far from Sky. They're up there in 4th and 5th.
Especially Rachel.
Well, exactly. Yeah, she was good.
Yes.
And she can juggle.
Yes, she brought juggling balls. Yeah.
Did she?
Do you not know she can juggle?
Well, I have seen it. I just didn't think she'd bring it out.
Yeah.
She had it ready. She had it ready.
She prepped.
If it helps, it's a tool you can use.
Anyway, right, let's hear. Are you ready for clip number 1?
No.
Let's do it.
Here it comes.
I think I fainted. I've died and got to heaven. It was always going to happen.
Right, what's going on there, Johnny?
I would imagine that's sort of crowd surfing. I would imagine.
Oh,
no, it's not crowd surfing.
Have another listen. Have another listen.
Ready? Here it comes again.
I've got my heaven.
I think I fainted. I've died and got to heaven. It was always going to happen.
Don't give him clues.
Have you fallen off something? Or?
Oh, is that? It's the hoverboard thing.
It's the hopper.
Oh, I've done so many falling off things, you see.
That was you falling off. That was here in what year?
Oh,
now,
crikey.
what year you can get?
Is this a bonus?
You can claw back a point. You can claw back a point if you can get the year.
dear.
You get
Come
a
on,
point.
Johnny.
15.
Oh, so close.
14.
Oh, the wrong way.
16. No,
Yes.
damn it. Oh. Okay.
I'm gonna give you.
I told you it wasn't going to go well. Go on then.
Be generous.
Do you want to give me a half?
Just give him
No,
two.
just give
I'll
me
give
a
you
half.
2 points.
Yeah,
It's
I want a
2
half.
out of 3. You want 1.5?
I want a half.
2.5. You want 2.5?
Well, I'll push it a bit further. Yeah.
You're having 2 for that.
Oh, okay.
That's it.
Right.
2.
What's
right.
Silverstone?
It was
I wasn't
Silverstone.
far
It
away.
was
I wasn't far
Silverstone.
off.
Okay,
Okay.
right. Here is your second clip.
Here we go.
We're not retired, man.
You're not going to retire. That's
You're not a
good.
true champion.
Good to have
Probably
you. Are.
You ended up as a commentator because you're not a true champion, man.
I know. Thank you very much.
Oh, do you remember that? That was painful to watch.
Do you recognise the voice?
You made up with the person in the end, but
Yes.
what's going on there?
He disagrees with me.
Who?
A lot. Fernando, the comeback kid.
Yes,
in
indeed.
Bahrain.
That was a bit of an awkward situation, wasn't it?
No, not really. No. He made his point, which
made his
was, I won a world championship, you didn't. So he got that right.
But you did make up in the end, I see as well. I think you were interviewing him on
we
the
did
road.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that
For
was
an extra point, can you tell me where and what year?
it was always Bahrain,
Correct.
as I said. Year? Oh dear.
Same as the last one.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yes, 2016.
He's got it!
We're on a roll. We're on a
3
roll.
points in the bag.
See you later, Coulthard, Pinkham.
I know.
Whatever.
I love both of you
You-
guys.
You've absolutely smashed Karun Chandok out of the park already. So,
Not difficult.
yeah. Okay, here is your penultimate clip.
Here we go.
The first most important question I have to ask you, Johnny, is are you allowed to have a drink this close to a race?
Yes.
Yeah, it's no problem. As long as I have a little drop, it doesn't do any harm. It's good for the blood.
A little drop.
Good for
Yes.
the blood. What's going on there?
Bottles. He had bottles of the stuff, I have to say. Yeah, little cooking. I think it was a Monaco 97, 98.
So
6?
I don't actually have the year.
Because it was at Sauber, so I think it's either 6
But
or 7. That's what I do remember.
I'll give you a point for
Definitely a
that.
lot later,
But
yes.
are you sure it was Monaco and not somewhere a little...
Really? This is a trick
Oh,
question.
no.
It's a trick question. It's Monaco. It was on the harbour.
Yeah.
On the harbour.
Well, in
It's
the,
near.
so-
It's near. It's not
near.
technically
France.
Monaco.
what's another lovely place in the south of France?
Nice can.
Oh, there we go. You're in Cannes.
Were we?
Yeah, well,
You
I mean,
sure?
that's what...
It looked
and-
like,
well,
I'm
for-
sure it was Monaco. I wouldn't have gotten a can.
Who else was with you in that clip?
Was it someone else?
Well, who's asking you the question?
Forgotten.
Sounds like Keith Minoid.
Floyd, Keith. Keith Floyd. I didn't know that. Oh, God. Can you edit this?
No, we don't have those capabilities in house.
Well, we can if we want
Keith
to.
Floyd, of course.
Keith Floyd.
Oh,
The
Okay,
legendary.
so that
What
was
a wally.
the legendary, sadly now no longer with us, Johnny.
I'm still
Keith
convinced
Floyd.
that was in Monaco.
Well, he said in the build-up to the programme, and I watched a good
He
15
may have
minute
come
clip
from-
of it,
from there.
He may have come from... I'm going to give you 2 points
Yeah,
for that
I
one.
think that's
because
fair.
you also have the Sauber background, so I'll give you that.
That's fair.
Brilliant. Okay, right. We'll put you out of your misery. We have a final clip for you and then a bonus question. You're not doing too badly. We're
I know.
looking solid from
Just
midfield.
There's a lot of help.
A few whispers. Okay, here's your final clip.
Okay, here we go. I'm loving this, by the way. Here we go.
Okay.
Like his aggressive driving style. And yes, he's making a few mistakes, but he's only 23 years old. He's only in his second season. Felipe has done many, many races. I think over 100 Grand Prix.
Yeah.
Same with Kimi. So they have a lot more experience than
Then who?
Who are you talking about?
Mad Max.
Oh, no.
You said it with such confidence.
He was
I
like,
did.
He's like, I've got this.
Right,
I've nailed
okay,
this
well,
one.
I see where you put that up because you said second year, 23 years old, but who else have you spoken about in that sentence?
In
Felipe
that
Massa?
sentence. Huh?
Felipe Massa you're talking about there, but
It's a while ago.
you're not talking... No, so in that
No, yeah, I
clip
know.
you've
I'm not talking
mentioned-
about Felipe Massa.
No, but he wasn't with...
Not.
He wasn't with...
Max. I
with-
wasn't thinking, yeah. Oh, dear.
Oh, the confidence you had as well on
it's,
that one.
it's just sinking. It's sinking. Making mistakes.
There was
Second year.
almost
Seb?
no. There was almost
Made some
arrogance with the
mistakes.
delivery of
Seb.
that answer.
But it
wasn't
was.
There? Yeah,
There
I've
it
got
was.
this. It was Max.
He's actually stood there, but without a head at the moment. If you look,
Valtteri Bottas.
Applause. No, I like it.
Was it about Lewis?
It was about Lewis.
It was about Lewis. Well, there you go. I don't know what I'm talking about.
To get maybe 1 point out of that, can you tell me what year you were?
Good luck with that
How do
one.
you think this is going to go? Is it right?
You can claw 1 point back.
Oh.
It was a good year for Lewis.
Oh, really?
Take your pick.
No. 14, 15,
8.
18.
Oh,
Oh, 8.
wait.
That far back.
Second year, Johnny.
My lord. I should
Oh,
have done the 23 is a
Yeah.
bit of giveaway, isn't it? Yeah,
You'll be glad to
I was
hear-
very good at maths.
There's no more radio. We're
Thank
done with
goodness.
radio.
But probably a hard question. John, you've really done, you've undone yourself there. Okay, bonus question for you. Come on. Claw it back with a point. And speaking of points, how many did you score in total in your Formula One career? Now, we're allowing you plus or minus 10.
Is it 161? 3?
160?
161 or 3? Is it 160? 150? It's not in the 50s.
No.
No. I'm getting confused.
Have a think.
99.
Oh! Go with it. Just say.
Is it 99?
You're 98.
98,
98.
okay.
I'm gonna
I
give
was
you-
doing
I'm
the wrong
gonna give
one.
you the point.
161 was races.
Races, yeah.
Yeah, didn't listen to the question.
Exactly. That will be your undoing.
You can see.
Let's do the maths on that one. Okay, so
Got to beat the Skylot. That's the important piece.
I'm afraid, Johnny, although you're not bottom of the pile,
Oh, dear.
you have scored a solid 8 points, but that does make you the last of all the Sky Sports pundits. But you're in around the likes of rally champion Thierry Neuville in
Yes.
around 16th spot.
Oh, it's okay.
Which isn't too
One
shabby.
last round of applause.
I
Too
said
shabby.
10 wasn't going to happen, so I'm fortunately happy with that.
You're there and
Thank
thereabouts.
you, guys.
And
You're
you're not off the pace too much. Karoon, you're
Wasn't
still
I?
you're still
My lord,
you're
I was
still-
a long way off.
I mean, you're still lapped Karoon. So,
Yes.
I thoroughly enjoyed that quiz. I think that's my favourite one to date so far. Now, listen, Johnny, we talked about your career. We're keen to get some of your thoughts and opinions. F1 has changed completely since your day. What's your take on it? Are Liberty Media doing a good job?
Well, yes. I think, their ideas is trying to make the entertainment part of it more important. That's something the teams obviously fight against, which I totally understand why they do that. Obviously, the rules for 22, I hope, will sort of enable that to sort of happen. I'm always a little bit skeptical when they come up with the idea and everybody team-wise sort of accepts it. I think they must know something if they've agreed with it so quickly.
Yes.
But yes, overall, I think they've done a lot of positive things. The paddock's a lot more open. The drivers do get a bit closer to the fans as well, and I think that is a very important part of it. So they have done well. They've done the Concord Agreement as well.
Yes,
obviously for the future as well. That's what Chase Carey sort of has done as well in difficult times. So so I think they have done personally a good job. It's a different world, like you said, and hopefully the future's bright.
One thing I've really enjoyed seeing about Formula One from sort of the business side, I suppose, being someone who's a bit younger, looking at where their YouTube page was about 5 years ago and the content they were doing, how inactive, didn't do anything, and how much that has changed. So I like to think they're with it now, with sort of the digital age. I think that's one sign of how they've improved.
Yes, and I think that is a thing that we didn't see with Bernie. Bernie wasn't really
He hated it.
interested in that. He hated it. Didn't understand it, I think, in many many ways. I think the other thing that is really good as well is these youngsters that we've got on board as well.
100%.
And Lando comes out, I think, sort of pretty much on top because he works it brilliantly.
Yep.
Is he engaging for the young generation? Absolutely.
Yep.
Is that an important part of the world of Formula One in the future? Absolutely. So I'm glad we got him. I'm glad we've got George and all the other guys that are out there. Charles Leclerc, Max. We've got a nice bunch of guys out there at the moment, and they seem to be moving with the technology as well.
Yeah,
which is great.
absolutely. And the future of British motorsport
Yeah.
looks pretty bright with the guys that you've just
Yeah.
mentioned there. One question I've got for you, which we actually asked of Mark Webber in the first episode of this new series, and I'm curious to get your take on it as well. I won't tell you his answer until after, but one of the things that a previous guest of ours, who was an IndyCar driver called Connor Daly, mentioned was that Lewis broken all the records, fantastic, doing brilliantly well. Connor's view was that if you put half of the IndyCar grid in that Mercedes, they would be as quick as Lewis Hamilton. Do you agree or disagree?
Absolutely disagree.
Same answer as Mark.
Yes, disagree.
I think Mark actually used some more choice words than that. But yes.
Yeah. Why do I say that? Well, as I said, from a pure natural ability, it's the most natural driver I've ever seen. Obviously, I saw Ayrton when we were karting together, when he was beating me back then. Then when we were in Formula One, when he was beating me back then. But Lewis is just way beyond that. His ability to get the best out of himself, even when he might need, against Valtteri, sort of a couple of attempts in qualifying, 99% of the time he finds it. And that, I think, makes me, sort of all in awe of what I see on the track. So, yes, I think the difference is, for me, is quite large. I think, IndyCar's a very, very different thing, and there's a lot of drivers out there that didn't quite make it over here but do very well out there. Then you sort of have that little question mark, well, it didn't work here.
Why is it working?
Why is it working the other way around? But that's a bit unfair.
It's so difficult to compare, but and especially in Formula One as drivers. But you look at Valtteri Bottas, Lewis Hamilton's teammate. Do you think he's actually a bit underrated? And getting within
for sure
less than 2 cents of Lewis Hamilton.
He beats him as well. He's not
and
beats
him.
him.
I think Valtteri's had his fair share of bad luck this year as well.
Sure.
He is probably. Nico Rosberg did get the better of him in the end, but it doesn't seem like Valtteri has to play mind games in order to do that either.
That's why he hasn't beaten them.
Do you think?
Yeah. That's one part of it.
Yeah.
One part of it. Yeah. The other part of it, which is why I said about Lewis being the best I've seen, is it's the consistency.
Yeah.
That's the other thing,
time.
and that's the thing where Valtteri's worked massively hard on trying to get himself in the right zone at every Grand Prix he goes to, and it's the best Valtteri Bottas I think we've ever seen. But Lewis just seems to always be able to find something extra. But he's underrated because if you do it at raw speed, but if you do it raw speed, he's got it. He's definitely got it.
Do you think he'll ever win a championship?
Again, he needs a little bit of luck as well. That consistency is going to be quite key. But it's amazing what little bit of luck has at the right time, at the right place, and then mentally it can really carry you a long way. So he can. And in many respects, I hope he's able to sort of do a proper challenge again next year.
Well, who's next in terms of obviously Lewis Hamilton well on his way to smashing all the records. Yep. Just a couple more to go, isn't it? World champions, and then if he gets a sixth one this year, he needs to get one more to equal Michael Schumacher, and then he'll go one more probably and beat him if he signs on, of course. Unsigned contract as of recording. But who's next? Who out of the current crowd? Who's going to beat all those records?
No, well, I've mentioned one of them already, as he Max.
Yeah.
For the wrong reason. But Max for sure. Charles, of course.
Yeah,
they're those two definitely sort of stand out a million miles. I think we've got George and Lando. I think they will be in the mix at some point if they're given the right. It's like anything. It's like with George at the present time. The right window has got to open at the right time for him to be able to get himself in a competitive car.
Yep.
And sadly, history has always shown that it doesn't always happen for certain drivers all the time. So anyway, hopefully that will be a good thing. But we've got a good bunch, as I said before. It's great with Carlos, Ferrari next year. Be interesting to see what he does. Another very, very consistent man as well. Very smart, like his dad. And it'll be an interesting fight between him and Charles. And then of course with whatever happens with Max's teammate down the line. I'm a big fan of Alex Albon, but unfortunately for whatever reason it hasn't quite clicked. And the only explanation I can have sometimes, a bit like Pierre, I suppose, when they had that chances, if they're not quite, it's quite weird how it works. If they can't mentally cope with all the extra pressure that a big team gives you, what the media, put on you when things don't go your way, that is where it sort of all starts to crumble. And I think that's what we've seen with Alex, sadly, and I think we saw it a little bit with Pierre.
Yeah.
But I think Pierre's probably stronger now than he was.
Yeah.
Going back to AlphaTauri, winning that race that he did in Monza, obviously. So that side of things is where you go back to Valtteri. Has adapted, has absorbed it. There has been some sort of horrible criticism in some ways, but you're always up against, the Lewis Hamilton, or Alex is up against the Max Verstappen, and they are the rare. Yeah. They're the rare ones, and can they be beaten? Yes, they can, but they can't be beaten enough to win a world championship. That's where they always stand out. But that goes back to all the world champions we've seen in the past. And I remember Mika, lovely guy, went to McLaren, totally changed his mentality because the way Ron wanted him to work within the team, it worked.
Yeah.
It absolutely worked. Did Michael do the same thing as Mika did when he went to McLaren? No, he got the team around him. Mika was given the team by Ron. So they're completely the opposite way of doing things. But at the end of it, they came together and they were able to win the World Championships and the battles that they had together. So it's just how you take all the positives from a team and how you then apply them. And I suppose Sebastian is the other one who's sort of he's very sort of lost at the moment. I think he's just sort of checked out and he's ready for this move next year. It's a British team. That's a big thing for us.
It's great. It'd be interesting to see how he does next year. Whether that, like you say, he's checked out. Let's hope he's still got that drive next year.
You don't win 4 World Championships. Just
Absolutely not.
No.
As I'm going to reluctantly move away from Formula One as we come towards the end, but I'm keen to get your thoughts on other championships. Formula E, you're obviously an F1 man. What's your take on Formula E and Extreme E and these championships cropping up?
Yeah, well, I like it. It's a new technology. It has a place in the motorsport world. Will it ever overtake Formula One? Not as I see it at the present time. But I like the entertainment factor of it. I think there's a lot of sort of comings-togethers with drivers and walls during the race, and I find it quite entertaining, to be perfectly honest. The squeal of the motor is quite annoying. I have to say, and the squeal's got worse, hasn't it?
Over the
so
years.
high pitched now. It's
We mustn't slag it off too much because
I like it.
our illustrious colleague here is. Are we allowed to talk about this?
I think you are.
He's one of the. He's down to the last 15. I'm going to blow your trumpet for you. Down to the last 15 to present Formula E in Santiago as part of a big search campaign nationwide, well, globally perhaps.
Globally.
To find a presenter. So fingers crossed.
Cool.
Harry makes some inroads there.
So I love Formula E.
It's the best.
It's the best.
Yes.
Beautifully produced.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. No, I like it personally. It has its place and it works. It works at the moment.
Hidden talent, Johnny. We know you're a good F1 driver. What else are you good at that people don't know about?
Quizzes, not so much, I have to say.
I can
Never
vouch
have
for
been.
that. I
bet you're
Yes,
looking
I know,
forward to,
exactly, yes.
Zoom quizzes?
But I like proving that point.
Which you did exceptionally well.
Thank you very much. So that's a win.
Yeah.
That's a win for me. I don't know. Golf, not really. That's something I do struggle with. I have an excuse for that. I blame the feet because obviously they don't allow
That's
me,
true,
especially on the putting surface.
Right.
Because I do seem to do extra kilometres walking past the hole, back and past it. It's like, what is wrong with it? Anyway, so golf. Yeah. What else do I do? What else do I do well at? Cycling. I suppose I'm not too bad with that. I wouldn't say I'm a Tour de France man, but I'm pretty okay in that. I'm a good fixer. I think I'm a good I'm called super glue dad.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm very good at sort of
for good
fixing
reasons.
things for good reasons, indeed. So I'm quite good at that. Yeah. So
And then flip that on its head. Well, golf might be on that then. What are you crap at?
quizzes.
Again, I can vouch for that.
Yeah, it's good. What am I bad at? Yes, exactly. Well, golf. So that one as well. I suppose my memory's not very good at. Yeah.
Remember it.
Yeah, that's what memory normally does. That's exactly. Luckily, I used to drive around in circles and always meet back at the place I started. So it
you
sort of
couldn't
worked
turn off
out.
anywhere.
No, I couldn't. No.
I'll just follow
Well,
them.
now and again. Now and again, you try to. Yeah. As I tried at Brands.
Yes, end up with
Never
a
something
couple
in
of
the
dodgy
wall.
angles.
Yes, exactly.
Did you have an idol growing up, whether it be racing or otherwise?
Yeah. Well, I suppose Muhammad Ali. Obviously, because I remember watching him with my parents when he was fighting. I remember the Rumble in the Jungle, for example. So I do remember watching that. And then from a racing point of view, it was Gilles Villeneuve.
Right.
And it was really, I sort of tried to base my racing on Gilles because Gilles would drive a car with 4 wheels on, 2 wheels on it, no wheels on it, upside down, backwards, whatever. And that was just what Gilles was special at. He had a very, very special skill. We always saw him sort of sliding the car around. The Zandvoort one where he had the puncture and he tries to drive around back to the pits, but he doesn't slow down, so the tyre sort of rips itself off it. But I think he was just an amazing driver. So Gilles was always the one that stood out for me. Nicky, yes, of course, obviously with what he went through after his accident. But yeah, Gilles the one I remember.
What would you say to either yourself at, say, 15 years old, Or what would you say to any young up-and-coming racers who are perhaps 14, 15-year-old now transitioning maybe from karts into cars for the first time? What would you say to them to make sure that they have some good standing to go forward in the sport?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing is life's difficult, as it is just day to day. Motorsport can be very, very tough as well. It doesn't always go to plan. You know, it doesn't matter how much talent you've got. So for me, with everything I've been through, especially through my accident, is never give up. Never, ever think, I can't do this, because sometimes things sort of come your way, that luck we were talking about. If it comes into play in your life, it's a very powerful thing to move you forward. So never give up. As far as myself as a 15-year-old, I have nothing to say to him. You're brilliant.
Yeah. Keep doing what you're doing, lad.
Keep doing what
Maybe,
you're doing.
maybe do
Yeah.
a few more quizzes.
A 15, no, go to school. Maybe, that's what it was.
Just general education.
Yes, I knew the setups and the sprockets I was using. Maths.
I'm with you on that one.
We're all bad at that. Yeah, me and Harry are appalling at
English, economics, woodwork, metalwork, PE.
Actually, I was
PE. I was all right.
Oh,
That was,
there you
again,
go.
another sporty thing. I was
There
all
you
right
go.
at running, long distance
I
running.
was so bad. We had design and technology at school, which is basically sort of woodwork, modern day woodwork. But I was so bad at it. Also found I hated it. So at one point we had to make something, and I began making it. Stuck a few things on it, and just threw it in the bin, and just acted like I'd lost it, and someone had stolen it, and spent the whole term looking for it. Never had to do it then. The teacher did it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, did it for you.
That's
Well,
how you do it. Get the teacher to do it
Yeah,
for
but
you.
it's one of those things. I had something else in my life. I had karting in my life, so that
exactly.
that was all
That's the
I
focus.
lived and breathed. That was it.
I didn't.
You wouldn't fit in, to be
I
fair.
did. No, and it shows.
Wow, lockdown's not been
Love
pleasant.
it. Love
Look, Johnny, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show,
Yeah.
even with that last
You won't
comment.
ask me back.
And we're going to cut it early there. No, we've got a final 3 questions that we asked to all our guests, all the same questions.
You said there was no more.
Final three. This is
See, I said you're nasty.
This is your penance, okay?
Right, okay.
Tim, do you want to kick off with the
I'd
first
love
one?
to,
Yeah,
yes.
good.
Johnny, what's got you excited at the moment?
What's got me excited, I tell you what, being able to get out of the house and go to a motorsport event. But I'm happy that we're on the road.
Yeah, fantastic.
If not doing what you're doing, racing driver turned pundit, what would you be doing?
Well, potentially, it's a bit off, not happening at the moment, but my daughter's always loved horses, which I detest. I hate them. Like a car, you have a crash, you fix it, you go out again. They always seem to be going wrong. And there's a circle of things, you sort of ride it, it goes lame, the vet comes in, then the bill comes in, then you wait a little bit, and then it all just starts all over again. So probably mucking out
Right.
would probably be something I'd be doing. Yeah,
Okay.
very good. I forgot about that. So, yeah,
That's a hidden talent.
Very good at
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Me
I'm,
and a wheelbarrow.
I'm with you on the horse thing. My wife is a brilliant horse rider, and she frankly pushes me into horse riding, and I do it every now and again, and it's just terrifying. It's so high, and they go so bloody fast, and you have no control. I can't turn left or right.
You've ridden, yeah? You've done, okay. Yeah.
I've
Can't do
galloped,
that.
I've
Yeah.
cantered.
I haven't gone that far.
I've
no.
done all that stuff, but it's all I'm winging it. I don't know what I'm doing.
Okay, what's the biggest fence you've jumped?
I've jumped a grain of sand. I haven't jumped any fences.
I think
She, on the
I
other
think
hand,
I've beaten
can.
you then. I've jumped a pole on the floor.
You've got a talent. There's your talent.
Another
Awful,
hidden
you're
talent.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
Awful things. Yeah.
Yeah, no, they're
Awful.
very powerful. I mean, very
powerful.
impressive.
Very impressive.
I
yeah.
jest, but they are
Yes.
terrifying when you're on top of them,
Yeah.
so to speak. Final question for you, Johnny, before we let you get on with your day. And this is one we ask everybody, as Harry says. It comes with all sorts of interesting answers. You can answer in any fashion you like. Crofty, one of your esteemed colleagues, he gave us a very weird answer on this one. The question is, what are you scared of? His answer was tea bags. God knows where that comes from. What are you scared of, Johnny?
What am I scared of? Very true. Yeah, I think there are occasions. Yeah, the wife.
She'll be delighted to hear
Yes,
that.
exactly. And
Yes.
the worst thing about it is when she does get angry with me, quite often, I can't run away.
No, there's no
It always
escape.
gets me. It always gets
When
me.
you're locked down, you can't go anywhere.
No, exactly. No. Yeah, so it's probably the Rebecca.
Yeah, fair
Sorry, my
enough.
love. I love you.
Oh,
Marry me again, please.
such a sweetheart. Johnny Herbert, thank you so much. That was the final question. So thank you so much for joining us on the
Pleasure.
MotorMouth podcast. And thank you as well to Silverstone Experience for hosting us.
Yes,
What an
fantastic.
amazing
Thank
venue.
you. Well done.
And for bringing in all your helmet. Where's the steering wheel from?
Jaguar. That's what I was going to show you about all the buttons on it.
Oh,
yeah.
There's,
we'll
there's
do
about
that.
6. That's all they've gotten back in those days.
Start, stop.
Yes.
Start and stop, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. And that's the helmet from Nürburgring.
Very
Amazing.
cool.
Well, thank you so much for bringing all that in and for your time. Johnny Herbert, it's been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Yeah, definitely so.
Thanks, Johnny.
Been great. Good fun.